Wow. Okay. And it's live. Wow. It has been forever. Hello, everyone. Hope you all have been doing well. Uh, I've obviously been very busy and not uploading videos. So I got a new computer, got a lot of things, new job. And I do want to make some content, not a lot, but this is kind of a test. So if you guys can see this, comment so that I know if anyone can see this or is watching. Do, 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 do. I think it's been a little bit over a year. I think I always used to wonder why YouTubers who made a lot of content stopped making content. And I know in my case, it's just because I get busy with other things and I just don't feel like it. I don't get many nights off, and it's not like I want to spend it talking about something that I've talked about before, typically. So, anyway, how are you guys doing? And no comments. Let's see, it says one person. Let's go here. New window. Is everybody having a good Saturday night? I think this says one person watching. Maybe not. Maybe zero. Can't even see the end stream button. Oh, hey, you can see it. So I want to make some content, but I'm just testing all my stuff to see if my cameras work, my streams work, my channel works. So sounds like you can see me and hear me. Is that right, Mr. Will? It's kind of funny. I have my new computer is too tall, and so my camera is on a pile of books. But because it's on a pile of books, I can't actually see the all the controls. It's a little bit annoying. I'm cool, huh? That's what they call it these days. Do 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 do. Yeah, so if anyone is here, chime in, say hi. Kind of wonder what happens with subscribers over time. I don't think anybody ever unsubscribes. I think that's a very deliberate act, but people kind of fade and it gets atrophied. It's funny how fast time goes. I was thinking it's been 10 years since I moved to New Hampshire, and I figured, oh, I should make content about that. The Free State Project has continued to unfold in a way that I don't think anybody anticipated, but in a good way. It's unfolding slowly but steadily, and hoping to go to PorcFest next year and check out those communal showers. Oh, yeah. that's definitely something that I'd like to talk about. I've spent a lot of time in the last couple days, prompted by the PorcFest facilities people. They've reached out to me recently. I've been in contact with them before, but there's some interesting stuff going on behind the scenes that I don't think I really want to talk about too much. But uh, it prompted me to go through my data during the every year that I've done it. I've done it 3 years. I tried to keep records. The first year, basically, just how many people and if they were guys or girls. The second year, I tried to record more stuff, their age, um, and but I did it in like 5 year increments. And then this last year, I recorded their age, their exact age, their sex, their previous communal shower experience, if they had any, if they didn't. And it started to kind of show some interesting data there. But more generally, the Free State Project has continued to grow. I mean, there's this weird. The idea was that people would decide they want to go when they got 20,000 signers, and then they would move, and they started the process. I think the vote on picking a state was in 2004, 2005. They got 20,000 committed movers in 2016, but people started moving immediately. And now that they've had the 20,000, this so-called triggers the move. I don't know that there actually caused an uptick after that happened. Hypothetically, if you had signed, then you would have 5 years to move. You've committed to 5 years to move, and obviously you're not legally bound. And I don't know how many of those people, like if you signed up in 2005 or six or seven, and the move was triggered in 2016, I feel like if you hadn't already moved at that point, the likelihood that you were going to move then was pretty low, but who knows? So, we got 6 people now. Big time YouTuber. I see that. So, uh, yeah. So, been here 10 years now. Time goes so fast. Uh, and yeah, they're gradually, slowly, already influencing the state in a big way, in a demonstrable way, and more and more and more. And I think more than triggering the move was things like COVID. COVID caused a lot of people want to move here. So, so I'm kind of wondering if you are watching, are you a subscriber? And if so, how long have you been a subscriber and why are you a subscriber? Was there a particular video or type of content that drew people in? I'd be kind of curious to see where that falls. I really have no idea at this point. Not doing videos and not getting comments. I mean, the videos that I have that get comments on them, there's a couple that are kind of perennial. They've stayed active. I've never had a video that became super viral, but there's several that are in the tens of thousands of views, and they get views, but they get the same type of comments. So, ironically enough, Boy Scouts, communal showers, Foreskin, a few others. Um, it's interesting. The libertarian stuff is not in the algorithm at all. The only of the libertarian stuff that had any legs at all was the Stefan Molyneux stuff, which who knows why. And even that has really calmed down. I don't know if Stefan Molyneux has gone away, so to speak, or if he's just been kind of algorithmically deleted or edited. It's possible that it's both. Um, but really, stuff about him was the only stuff that seemed to just every other video. It didn't matter on whether it was gun control or roads or taxes or schools or anything else. Just kind of plateaued. You get your first little bump and then it would go down. So yeah, it's interesting. So what do people want to hear about? Again, just kind of curious what, I don't want to say the fan base, the subscribers are interested in. I'm just kind of curious who are the subscribers at this point, right? So yeah. Well, this sounds like this is working. So What I would like to do is restart the stream. Oh, hi, Leon Sarek. How's it going? All right, good night. It's not too far from that where I am. I always wanted to know what your YouTube name means. Yeah, so the story there is that there's not a it doesn't it does mean something, but it wasn't intentional. So I have answered this before. I think that at some point many years ago, I did. It was something that people asked a lot, and I kind of kept it a mystery for a while, but I don't anymore. Um, so when I first got YouTube, I actually didn't have internet. I was in college. I didn't want to pay for internet where I lived. I rented a very small room. And so when I had to do internet related things, or if I even just wanted to be on the internet for any reason, I would go to a computer lab at my university and I would log on. I think, I don't remember if YouTube gave you any access, like if you could be on there and not have a profile or not. I don't remember. I think you did. I, in order to, I think if you wanted to comment, you had to have a profile name. And so that's what I did. And I had, I mean, I think the very first thing that I did on YouTube was Google anarcho-capitalists and start watching the content that was out there. And there were, it seems like there was a number of people who basically did the exact same thing. That there are these disparate, spread out people who were not affiliated with any organization. In the years before the Ron Paul presidential runs in 2008 and 2012. Obviously, there were libertarian organizations. There was FEE. FEE had been around forever. There was all the Ayn Rand related stuff. There was obviously the Mises Institute, Reason and Cato. Like all these things existed, but they were basically like publishers publishing on the internet. They did not have large networks. They didn't have a lot of people that were engaged. And prior to that, you had a lot of isolated individuals. And a lot of these people at the time, and I think I've talked about this, um, libertarianism and specifically anarcho-capitalism has gone from something that was incredibly tiny and very rare to something that's more common. Now, it's certainly not a majority. It's not most people. It's not, um, you know, oh, we're about to take over the world, despite the fact that we now do have an anarcho-capitalist who's the president of Argentina, which is probably something worth talking about at some point. But the people who were anarcho-capitalists then, typically, from my experience, were people who were very well read, who had gone through a lot of philosophy, history, economics, and who had gradually gone through stages of libertarianism until the point where they became an anarcho-capitalist. But being in that position essentially always meant that you had no one to talk to about that. You know, wherever you lived, whatever your life cycle was, whether you were a student, whether you weren't a student, whether you graduated, you didn't have a lot of people to talk to. We didn't have social media, really. Social media was just then starting to exist. It was before smartphones even. And so people would go. And so this exactly, I went onto YouTube and I searched for anarcho-capitalist and, found these videos. I think at the time there were pretty stringent length like restrictions. So videos could only be, I think, 4 or 7 or 8 minutes long, something like that. And I'm quite sure that the first one I ever saw was by a YouTuber called Liberty Is Not Given, who was in Arkansas. and just an interesting guy, a singer apparently. And he had a video like why anarcho-capitalism. And so I got really interested in that stuff, and I would come to the college and go, and I had some work that I had to do. I was just finishing my degree at that point, and I would go and I would do whatever work I had to do, and then I would watch these videos. Um, I had a YouTube name at that time. I had no videos at that point. I didn't make videos. I didn't have a camera. There was not a strong desire to make videos at that point, but I didn't even have the means. I literally couldn't afford a camera or have internet at my house. So uh, I would watch videos. And then at some point, because I wasn't auto logged in, because this wasn't happening on a home computer or through an app, obviously, uh, I completely forgot what my YouTube name was. I forget. Even now, I couldn't tell you what it was. And so one day I was there, and I wanted to go and watch the latest Ex Omniverse video or whatever it was. Another very early YouTuber that I think found within the first day, and I was also at the time learning Icelandic. I was practicing Icelandic pretty much every single day, and I had just watched an Icelandic video. There were a group of people in the Stykkishólmur, which is in the Snæfellsnes Peninsula in northern Iceland, and there was nothing special about them. They were just a bunch of goofballs, but they uploaded a lot of uh, YouTube videos of them talking, and there were very, very few videos of Icelandic people speaking. I mean, there were news reports, you could watch that, but that was not a very good um, analog to real life. So I would watch these. Actually, the name of their channel was I Stupid, and at one of the videos they kept saying "LinkedIn Arthur, LinkedIn Arthur, LinkedIn Arthur," and I had just gotten good enough that I had a eureka moment. I understood what they were saying. I just thought that was so cool. And the next time I went to log in, I couldn't remember my login name. I couldn't remember my password, and I had to start from scratch. And I just put that in because that was the name that I remembered, LinkedIn Arthur. And now at the time, no videos. I don't even think I was commenting. This would probably have been in no later than 2008, but it could have been 2006 or seven. Probably 2007 would be my best guess. And then I graduated college. I started working. The first 2 years after college, work was very sporadic. And although I had a lot of downtime, I had no money. So like whatever income I had in that first 2 years was going to service debt and just kind of keep my head above water. Typical college, post-college person. Then my third year after college, the oil field work that I ended up doing for 10 years really picked up. And the oil field work was highly remunerative. I made very good money in that. And so one of the first splurges, one of the first things that I decided to spend discretionary income on was a camera. I got a cheap, I think it was $50, a Logitech, whatever their standard thing was at that time. And I started making videos. And I had initially really done it out of catharsis because you would watch a video and you'd want to argue. And you'd go and put comments in, and there were limits, I think a 500 character limit. And I was literally doing the stuff of like shorthand or taking out the spaces or getting rid of the punctuation to try and fit like that one more word to make the comment, or you could reply to it was just a silly system, right? I mean, you understand they're trying to save space, but if you it's this weird situation where you're trying to fit a dense comprehensive answer to some question, whether it be the roads or gun control or whatever it is, into that constrained system. So I just decided it would be better to just make videos because it's easier, and then more people would see them. What's the point? Like, you want to express yourself in a comment, but then realizing that you're in a comment thread that very few people will read. Now, sometimes some of these videos in the early days, I mean, there was a lot of debate. I mean, YouTube has really changed a lot since then, and I'm sure that kind of debate still happens, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's become, I don't know, rare, or like in the eddies and the isolated areas that you don't like. It's not the feeling of the platform anymore. And uh, so I started making videos, but I had this YouTube account with this name, but the name was never, oh, I'm going to make channels and this is going to be my name. I think I would have had some stupid name like Mr. ANCAP or the Anarchist or something like that. But that wasn't it. It was totally random, and uh, the name has nothing to do with libertarianism. It was just something that I thought was cool at the moment, way before I started making videos. And then it started to become not an issue, but like a recurrent question, like you're asking now. Why? What does the name mean? So I started. I mean, people started asking. You know, it was a common thing to do ask me anythings at like Hallmark subscriber numbers. So, oh, I have 500 subscribers. Ask me anything. I have 1,000 subscribers. Ask me anything. I don't know how many of those I did. A couple, and that was one of the recurrent things that I would get asked a lot. And it did seem, maybe it's just the algorithm doesn't show you these people anymore, but there did seem to be a lot of people entering the space that just wanted to talk about ideas. They wanted to talk about whatever it was. I mean, it wasn't just libertarians. I mean, you had all kinds of anarcho-syndicalists, anarcho-socialists. You had communists. You had tankies. You had, um, I'm sure there were conservatives and things. But I didn't. Maybe I just wasn't as keyed into that. I feel like if you had an ideology that was well represented in the mainstream, you know, if you could get it by watching the news, then the incentive, you know, if you could watch Fox or CNN or MSNBC, or you could get it from your professor at school, there probably wasn't a strong incentive like we need to go to YouTube. And so it wasn't certainly just libertarians by any means, but if you had anything that was heterodox or way out of the mainstream where you didn't have a forum, that's where people, like, they flocked to it right away. And there was all of this. I mean, they used to allow you to do video replies, and you would, you know, someone make a video about, you know, is Ayn Rand a libertarian? You know, and they would make a video, and someone else would reply and say, no, they are, yes, they aren't, and blah blah blah. And that was sometimes how you found new YouTubers, and there were many, many, many. I mean, I'm sure I didn't know them all, and by no, I mean watch. I wasn't friends with any of these people or know them personally. I've subsequently met some of them and gotten to know a few of them, but it it was just very, very different. And people wanted to vlog, and people just wanted to talk about their ideas, and that's what I always thought was appealing. And the problem was that's not the kind of content that drives the platform. Oh, was that you who asked me to make a Palestine video? Didn't you offer to pay me for that? If so, I don't have any way for you to give me money. But um yeah, when did I do a Palestine video? Was that after the Hamas stuff? Oh yeah, it was the Palestinians get their Masada. Yeah, I mean, I really actually want to make more Jew videos. I really, really think Jews are interesting in so many ways. Uh, I I'm not an anti-Semite. Like, I'm not one of those people who you just hate all Jews or think all Jews are create everything. But their religion, and their religion is broad. So like, there's so many qualifications. Wow, this is going to become the podcast on the Jews. Um, you know, there's versions of Judaism that I have no problem with, and there's versions of Judaism that, uh, you know, it's whatever, who cares? And even the ones that I don't like, I'm like, man, you can have a religion that I don't like. That's fine. Live and let live. But there's a lot of the Orthodox, the Hasidic, the main, like, that is like, if you, well, so Talmudic Judaism is disgusting. Let's just say that. Like, the theology of Talmudic Judaism is absolutely disgusting. And it's not that different from a lot of other petty religions out there that, you know, oh, you're the in group is everything and the out group is horrible. But it is weird how many Jews who are secular or not super religious, but who will. I mean, when I see Ben Shapiro will name drop the Talmud as a source of inspiration and whatever for him, and I just have to wonder, like, well, is that the part where does he like the part? Does he agree with the parts of the Talmud that just think all Christians are horrible, that you should curse a Gentile cemetery, that you should curse Gentiles, that you should not do anything to help them, that you should that it's okay to lie and cheat, right? And I'm not saying that he believes that. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But like that is what the religion teaches. And if you're one of those people who picks and choose from your religion, which many people do, many Christians do that, many Jews do that, then that's cool. But it's a little weird when it's not acknowledged. Like a Christian who said, like, yeah, I don't believe in the Old Testament, and I'll tell you why. Okay, fine. Or I interpret this way. But when they just say, I'm inspired by the Talmud's great. Okay, so no qualification there. So yeah, and obviously, like again, I don't think Jews are a race. I think that it's a religion and a culture that masquerades as a race. Sometimes I think what's going on in Israel is super fascinating. The attitude of the religious Jews in Israel is fast. Like they're heavily subsidized. They're protected by the state of Israel. The state of Israel sees them as very useful because that is their tie to the land. They don't have a genetic tie to the land. They don't have really the historic tie to the land is just a joke at this point. The Ashkenazi Jews, their connection to Israel is no greater than if I were to convert to Judaism tomorrow, cut off my restored foreskin and say I'm a Jew, and now I'm an indigenous Palestinian at that point. It doesn't make sense. But the connection is through this cultural religious history, through these religious texts like the Talmud and the Old Testament and the Pentateuch, and for that reason, this super orthodox sect of crazy racists are super important to them. And so they're subsidized. They don't have to join the IDF. They don't have to. I don't know if they don't pay taxes or not. And they're totally ungrateful about it. It's by and large. I mean, there are exceptions, obviously. And one of the things that struck me the most right after, and this is not going to go away. This struck a lot of Israelis, too, secular Israelis. And, there's a whole discussion to be had about even the secular Jews. How much is their worldview affected by their cultural and religious Judaism? And it varies. I mean, some of them it's very little, some of it's a lot. Some of them will take things from Judaism that are fine. There's good things about Judaism, and there's Jews who take the good things, whatever you want to call good or not. I mean, it's broad enough that people will do that. But what was fascinating is as that was unfolding on October 7th, because it was some holiday, there were all these Orthodox Jews who were dancing and singing in the streets as this, the worst thing since the Holocaust by some standards. Even without hyperbole, potentially true, were dancing in the streets in celebration. And then when the rest of the whole country got mobilized, they were calling all the reserves, calling back all their soldiers from Greece and from all over Europe, and making out the call. But then these Talmudic scholars who just spent all day reading the Talmud, which is what a waste. I mean, how many people have already done that throughout history? You don't need to do it again. We got Maimonides, go read him. We don't need, if you have 8 children and 3 of them are boys, not all 3 of them need to become Talmudic scholars. But anyway, there's even a video of an IDF colonel going into a yeshiva and saying, I'm going to go fight for you and for Jews and for my country and whatever, rightly or wrongly, but understandable. And they're just like, don't interrupt. I'm, doing my fucking prayer thing at the Talmud. Don't interrupt me. Don't ask me to do that. I mean, yes, you should go and protect me, but I'm too important it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Now we're going to lose the whole live stream. Yeah. Hopefully this will be the year you can make it to PorcFest. Yes, you should all come to PorcFest. My wife and brother cut back on the Mormonism now, and their son has come out as trans. So I don't think I've made videos about it, but I got super interested in Mormonism like this summer. I spent the whole summer watching my Mormon Stories podcast, getting into like the Book of Abraham and the CES letter, and Mormonism is super fascinating. I don't care about it in the same way about the Jews because we're not subsidizing the Mormon church, and the Mormon church is not like killing anyone, and they're, as wrong and kooky and ridiculous as their religion is. It does a lot of good. The bad that it does, I don't want to diminish it. That does do a lot of bad, but a lot of that is just kind of the standard. So like there's a certain, like if you have a potent social thing, if you have a group that's really intense, you can make people do good things and bad things, and it's kind of not it's kind of neutral on that. So Mormonism is fascinating, but I mean it's not like they're genociding a group of people right now. So free Palestine. Ex-Paladoc, you have children now? I thought you were a man going your own way and like you weren't going to have kids. Am I misidentifying you with somebody else? Dude, if you cut off your intact skin, that would be wild. For the record, all my sons are intact. Good for you. All sons should be intact, including Jewish children. Jewish children should be intact too. If they really want to become Jews later, they can get circumcised. I know guys who did that. That's their choice. Go ahead. Been subbed from different accounts since gun control. Really enjoyed the book reviews and learned about the FSP here. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, my very first videos were all about gun control. Of all the topics that I find interesting, and I find a lot of things interesting, and all the things that I maybe saying passion is too strong of a word, but like the libertarian stuff, it just eats me up. Public schools, they infuriate me. The wars infuriate me. The federal government just pisses me off to no end. The local government, the fucking library, John Dewey. There's so much, but the first thing, the thing that I felt the strongest about, that I felt not just that was of the strongest moral imperative, but also the strongest utilitarian arguments. Whenever I would see debates about gun control, I just felt like the pro-gun people were just leaving it. Like it could have been done so much better. And so, I started out, I think the first video was titled like gun control introduction series or whatever. And then I went through like, suicides and comparing with other countries and gun deaths and mass shootings and Australia and the UK and concealed carry, everything. Like I just went through boom, 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 boom. But like I had no audience at the time. So like the videos would get 20 views, 30 views, 40 views. You would get a comment that would, they typically would say, yes, I agree with this. But my kind of plan, and I've said this before, was I'll make all these pro gun control videos, and then everybody in the NRA will like them and love them and think I know what I'm talking about, because I thought I did know what I was talking about when I came into guns. And then I would introduce the libertarianism as like a black pill. And, I made those videos, and then I just got impatient and started making the libertarian videos, even though by then, I'd gone up in subscribers to 45 or 50. Yeah, the whole growing the channel thing has always been a problem. It's just there's been a linear growth, but I actually think it's not even like a net growth, because for every new subscriber, there's just a certain number of profiles that just become defunct. So yeah. Oh yeah, no. So I've had multiple people say they learned about Bitcoin through me. I had some people who made a lot of money, made way more money than I ever did off Bitcoin. So, if we ever feel indebted, not that I'm hurting for money or anything, but, um, And speaking of book reviews, I do want to do book reviews, and that's something I've done a lot of reading lately. I still continue to read. You can see all the books I've recently reread a lot. Well, not reread. I've done a lot of reading on the Civil War again lately. Something that I hadn't done in many years, and I find that stuff fascinating. I'd love to talk about it. Actually, I do want to do one thing. I had an idea to do a long time. I would like to do a review of the film Lincoln, uh, because I kind of hate that film. So like that actually may be something. If I can figure out how to do the split screen right, I might end up doing a Lincoln review, because I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, Mormons are pretty quirky, but I've never seen a reason to hate the people either. Yeah, I don't. I mean, when you look at the manipulation and stuff done by some church officials and whatnot, it's easy to, that's terrible and that's disgusting and whatever. And also, it's stupid that you believe this when, I mean, at least with Christianity, it was so far ago that it's hard to, we can't say too much for sure about Jesus. He probably existed, but maybe not. It's too far removed, and so there's a degree of ambiguity where you can have faith, or you can, the shreds of documents that we have, and if you want to assume that they're real, and I think it's very likely that Jesus was a real person, and we can say a couple things about his ministry, perhaps, but more than that, very, very difficult. That's enough that you can. But with Joseph Smith, when we just know he was a liar, that he made stuff up constantly, and that he practiced polygamy and lied about it, and he uh, like was a gold digger, that he was digging up, and a grave robber. Really, that's the main thing. He would rob graves of Native Americans to find treasure or look for treasure, although he never found it. And Pretend to read hieroglyphics, right? That's the whole Book of Abraham. Pretend that they could read Egyptian and then make up fake books and blah 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 blah. And it's you're not going to hate somebody for believing that or being brought up in that. That's not something worth hating them for, certainly. But come on, we know it's bullshit. um, I never got married, but yes, I have children, and I am men going their own way. So, do you like live with your woman, or you just had her have some kids with you? Like you cohabitate? I'm kind of curious. This guy was pushing me years ago to like marry a girl, or not marry a girl, to reproduce. Was it you who wanted me to reproduce, to have offspring? I think it was you. Um, you also posted a couple videos about spectacular sports. Yeah, I actually do want to do more football videos, and stuff on the NCAA. I think the stuff with the NCAA is very interesting and disturbing. Um, the history of football is actually kind of fascinating. I don't like football as a sport. I don't like watching it. I think it raises a lot of serious ethical questions. I think that it also, like a high maintenance religion, can bring out the best and the worst in people. Um, and the stuff with college football in particular, like with pro football, it's ethically much more clear. They're getting paid, they're professionals. You could say that in the past they didn't necessarily know about, especially with the CTE, what that was involving. Now that they do know, they know, and so they can say, "I'll take the risk or not take the risk." Um, with the college players, it's fascinating because they're not getting paid. They're getting, it's hard to say exploited necessarily, but uh, they're classified as student athletes, but then the expectations placed on them are to basically do an amount of work that is like a job, like the amount of time that they have to, they're controlled, how much they sleep, how much they eat, what they eat, working out, the practices, and you add up the time, and it's more than a full-time job. Um, and there's this idea, it's just like, what is the point of college? Is the point of college to be a feeder program for a semi-pro football team, or is the point of college an education, and whatever that means? And there's a whole other series of questions and difficulties with what is even supposed to be an education. But in the context of a well-rounded education, And I grant that there's actually a lot of issues with that idea conceptually, and certainly not something that should be subsidized, whatever you want to define it. Um, that a sport might be a good thing, right? You go and you read and you get all this mental training, and then you go and do something that's physically taxing, and you get camaraderie and teamwork and face adversity, and that's a good element. And I think that's true. I think that many people can benefit from that and would benefit from that. But when that becomes to the exclusion of everything else, you're not really talking about pedagogy or education at this point. And the problem is that the vast majority of the players will never go pro. They will probably sustain all kinds of injuries. And also, the vast majority will either not graduate or graduate with something that's completely worthless. They'll peak, their bodies will be ruined, and they'll just be a washed up 25-year-old who had dreams of going to the NFL. And for every one of them who makes it, there's about 100 who don't make it. And that's at like the D1 level. If we're talking about the high school level, it's more like 1 in 1,000 who makes it or whatever. So the NCAA has kind of jerry-rigged the rules so that they call them, quote, student athletes. They don't have to pay them. They don't have to give them rights. They can't unionize for whatever that's worth, despite the academia being so pro-unions and labor and whatnot. Now, how can you pro-labor and then tell me that that a linebacker at Ohio State is not doing labor? That's harder labor than just about anything that you can do, right? And it's also interesting too, like the money involved, because at the big universities, the big D1 schools, yes, the players are valuable commercially in a serious way. University of Michigan, Ohio State, UT, LSU, Penn State, like these big schools that pack every stadium. U of M has sold out every game in 110,000 or 108,000 big house stadium for, I think, since the 60s or the 70s, some ridiculous amount, and their merch and blah blah blah. And those players, so I've read the studies that like an average D1 football player is worth about $300,000. But that is not true at D2. That's not even true at all the D1 schools, certainly not D3 and D4. Everywhere else, there are net losses, right? If you have a Division II college and they're having football games, they're losing money. Like that program probably costs more. Yes, they make some ticket sales, and yes, they make some concessions, and yes, there's some merchandising, but it's not as much as it costs, because it costs millions of dollars per year. So yeah, that's a fascinating. What's interesting too is like the part of college sports that's probably the closest to something that's even remotely defensible as part of an education would be like either like the Division 4 and the Division 3 schools, where they just don't have the money or the funds or the pretense to make it bigger than it should be. Certain schools that are ideologically that way anyway. So, for example, the Ivy League schools tend to be like this. So, Harvard, Yale, Dartmouth, they have sports. They care about sports. People go to the games, and they do obviously give scholarships, and some of their athletes are going to be people who probably wouldn't make it to Harvard otherwise. But they don't focus on it nearly as much. They don't have 10 players who are all idiots who could never, ever get there and never have a real job like you could have at SMU. So, and then the other thing is girls sports. So as much as people want to criticize something like the WNBA, and there's lots of interesting reasons to criticize the WNBA, but in college, it's a little bit different. They don't have the fans, they don't have the revenue, and there's also the understanding that, like, okay, what, you're a really good girl basketball player, so you're going to make the WNBA. Okay, and just get a regular job. You have better odds, and you can probably make more, and your career will be longer. So that, even though, like, in terms of competitiveness or how fun they are to watch, a female sport like the female girls basketball versus men's basketball, there's just no comparison. But in terms of like approximating something that makes even begins to make sense pedagogically, the women's sports are probably better. So, wow, I almost just made a video right there. But yeah, I've read a couple books on that, and that's one thing when I've seen people mention me, this, oh, he's made a video about football. I made one video about football like 10 years ago. Oh, I wanted to ask you how long for a long time. Did you ever read Pieces of Eight about U.S. money? No, it's on the shelf right there, and I thought very essentially. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I was like, I think I should finally read it. So it's one of my most expensive books. For those who don't know, it's by a guy named Edward Vieira. He has four, I believe, four PhDs in like law, chemistry, history, something like that. And it's supposed to be the best book on what the Constitution says. And it's how can a book? It's 2 volumes long. How can a book about what? I mean, the Constitution itself is what 5,000 words or 12,000 words, and his 2 volumes are like I grabbed them. That's kind of hard to reach right now, but it's probably runs like 800 pages total. They're super expensive. You couldn't buy it online for years, and Vieira was very litigious about his copyright, and so he was not. There was demand, but he was not just well. I'll just self-publish it or whatever. And so he was even doing like a if he could get 1,000 people to pledge $1,000, then or something like that, $200, he would pay to have a run done. But eventually, it was done, and I got copies of it way back. It's probably my third or fourth most expensive book that I've ever bought. Um, so no, I do want to read it, but I haven't yet. Thank you for reminding me how far behind I am. I think I found you a decade ago searching for Molyneux stuff. Yeah, like Molyneux. I mean, Molyneux. When I was talking earlier about the early YouTube days, like all those guys have moved on. Ex Omniverse and Liberty is Not Given and Austro Libertarian and Neilcio and Aaron and 885, Luke 12,000. All these, like, there's so many, and I even beginning to recall them, and I'm gonna miss tons, and I'm not even try. And Stefan Molyneux is one of the very few who basically didn't go away, and he continued to grow, and he became more and more successful. I first watched his videos. He had 2,000 subscribers, so he was not even half as big as my paltry little YouTube channel is now. But grew and grew and grew and grew, and he was getting uh, more like almost like actually famous, you know. And but he became famous as he started to transition into things that were not libertarian at all. And like I've done videos about when he jumped the shark for me, and it was way back. I distinctly remember the first time I saw a video of his, and I was like, "This guy's full of shit." And it was 2009, I believe. I actually remember where I was. I was at my aunt and uncle's house in Texas. I remember watching it, and I thought, "This guy's full of shit. He is not what he makes himself out to be." And it got worse and worse, and so I made a couple videos about it, and then those got shared by FDR Liberated. FDR Liberated was, the help group for the former. I mean, they called it a cult. That's semantic and maybe unfair description, but they posted a couple videos, and including some of mine, and I mean, yeah. So I think a lot of I'm quite positive, knowing what I know about him, that he has seen all that stuff. But I'm a nobody, so he's not going to address it, obviously. But I didn't meet him, but I saw him at PorcFest, probably in 2013 or 2014, and I think that's when I started making videos about him, because some of the stuff he said, like it was 2009 that I knew something was wrong, but it was at PorcFest that I was like, yeah, this guy's a problem. And I say that because there's so many things that are laudable about him. He has done. I mean, it's not easy to persuade people to become a radically different political ideology. It's not. I've done it to some people, but a very small number, dozens or hundreds, or I could pat myself on the back and say 1,000, but that's not true. It's way less than that. And for him, it's probably in the hundreds of thousands or millions, even. Who knows? He would be in, if you were going to start listing people who have converted the most libertarians, man, he'd have to be on that list somewhere. below Ron Paul and below Ayn Rand and below Mises and Rothbard and Lou Rockwell, but like he would be somewhere up there in the top 10 probably. Like, and it's respectable to be able to do that, and to also to make a career out of it, to quit his job and to just become a YouTube person way before it was big and way before his channel was big enough. It wasn't like somebody, some of these huge YouTubers who obviously that they're very wealthy and they have millions and millions, and they quit their job after they get a million. He did that way early. So yeah, and politically, like, I agree with him on most things. There's things I disagree with him on, obviously, but like compared to him to almost anyone else, and I think it's unfair that he's been, was deplatformed and all. That's ridiculous. you know. So yeah, I haven't made any content on him in forever. I think everything I think about him has been said, and he disappeared from YouTube. So I don't really, out of sight, out of mind, I don't really think about him anymore. But I guess he's still out there. The other big thing too is he just lied to Joe Rogan's face, like blatantly. And I think that tanked it from it. And then, I mean, for libertarians, there was the whole thing where he berated somebody for donating him the small amount of money because he had to itemize that on his taxes or whatever. And it's like, okay. Wow, now there's more comments that I can keep track of. Jeez. The Church of Latter-day Saints. Yes, okay, you were pushing me to have children. Well, it still hasn't happened. I'm sorry. I want you to have some children because you think you were a great father. You sound just like my mom. I'm telling you, though, that would be very difficult. I would have a hard time making that work. Yes, I'm not debating. I mean, the stuff you're saying about having kids, I'm not saying is untrue. What do you think of Javier Milei? Thank you for asking, Cinefam. So from what I can tell, he's the real deal. He's a real anarcho-capitalist. He's a doctrinaire, very well-read, very sophisticated libertarian. I was actually listening to his speech. I forget where it was, and I was kind of doing something else at the same time. And he fucking name dropped Israel Kirzner. And I was like, oh, because Israel Kirzner is not super famous. It's one thing to say Rothbard or Ron Paul or Mises or Milton Friedman, but Israel Kurzweil, I don't want to say he's like obscure, but it perked up my ears right away. So I don't know enough about the political system in Argentina to understand how. I mean, apparently he's balanced the budget. He keeps cutting things. He talks about collectivism. He equated taxes with rape. He wants to deregulate and has deregulated, but I worry. Apparently his powers as an executive, and they're not dictatorial. There's something in their constitution that allows in cases of an emergency, but then it makes you wonder what happens when the next president just comes and declares an emergency and undoes all of it. So, I think he understands that the likelihood is that things will get much worse before they get better, which seems likely to me. But I'm hoping that the upswing is very strong and not too far away, and that he can get credited for that. But I think he's a legit, real libertarian. I have no idea how that. I mean, apparently things in Argentina are very, very bad. They've been bad for a long time. They've had hyperinflation forever, and there's no reason for this because Argentina has everything going for it in terms of it should be a prosperous country. And there were times when it was. There used to be a saying, rich as an Argentine, back in the 1800s. So Can he do it all on his own? I don't know. Like, I don't know how much support he has in the parliament. I know he has some. He does have a party. He's not just like a one man deal, but he seems like a legitimate libertarian, and he's doing. I like. I don't. If you're in the situation that he's in, I don't know what the argument is for gradualism. Because you got to get what you can get, and it's relatively speaking an emergency. So, ethically, this comes back to like the push the button thing. Do you push the button? And unless there's a really strong reason that you can do something more gradually, then you kind of have to when you get the chance, because you may not get the chance again. You guys are just talking about Bitcoin. I lost track of Steph. I did once talk to a woman who was quite attractive, who gave money to Steph, but she was a terrible person, as to be expected. Yeah, so like a lot of Steph. I mean, so one thing that FDR Liberated, talked about, and to their credit, made this distinction. And they said, look, I mean, he had a big audience, and a lot of the people in his audience just enjoyed some of his stuff and watched some of his videos. And those types of people, they could be anyone, and you really couldn't generalize things about them, because you could watch his videos because you were a libertarian. You could watch his videos because you liked his psychology videos or psychiatry videos, or you were a misogynist and just wanted to hear about how horrible Harry Potter and Galadriel are, or how Star Wars is fake, or what, I don't know. Like, but then you had rings of interest, and he had formalized them, so like, to distinguish him from my channel, I don't think there's a way to, like, how would you describe a Lengthy Arthur super fan? I don't have an organization. I don't have a website. There's no donations. There's not a Patreon. There's this. I have subscribers, and some of you watch more and some of you watch less, but there's no way to characterize it. And there's no, it just, it's too indefinite. Right. So, but then as you get deeper and deeper, you get these people who are just heavily, like, they're defooing their families. They're manically going through all of his content. And what was crazy is he was incredibly prolific. The amount of content that he produced was astronomical. It's probably so much now that no one alive today, if they wanted to start from scratch and watch it all, it might not be possible, other than as like a full-time multi-decade, like, thing, because it was so much. But there were people in the earlier days who would do that, and they would withdraw from their family and friends and from society generally to just fixate. And like, he does have, and having become a hypnotist since then, I don't know if he's doing it intentionally or not, but he has the ability to grip certain people, and certain people are also really suggestible, right? If you do something, if you speak in a certain way and you put it out there, it's just probabilistic that a certain number of them are going to open up to that. They're going to be suggestible to that. And and if you have 10 people watch the video, then the number that will happen to will be 0. But if you have 10,000, the number might be, 50 or 60 or whatever. So, and then you had people that he could give directives to, like, I want you to go here. If they're going to go to a meetup, if they're going to follow him to PorcFest. And this is where I noticed it. They went to PorcFest, and I don't want to say he made them, but he told them to wear his merch, and they did. And it's like, why are you, I mean, I get you're marketing your merch, you've got your Steph Bot shirts or whatever, Free Domain Radio, whatever it was. I remember what they looked like. I don't remember exactly what they said. But they were white, and they had, I think, his logo. But okay, I get it. But it also is like, you're making them wear a uniform, and you're making them identify as your person, because it's one thing to be like, well, I'm the Mises Institute, but Mises is dead. So like, wearing a Mises Institute doesn't imply that, like, Lou Rockwell is your daddy and you do whatever he says. This might be more true, applicable to someone like a politician like Ron Paul. You got a Ron Paul shirt, fair enough. But like, then they would be like, they were really insufferable. Like, you would be one of the best things about PorcFest if you ever go, and you should all go to PorcFest. You should go this year if you can. One of the best things about PorcFest is you get to meet all these people. This year. So, for instance, some of you maybe know Jack Lloyd. What's he? He does the comics, but I've known him forever on YouTube and Facebook, and we don't talk much. We're not friends, but like we've known of each other. Well, I was sitting at my pork showers at PorcFest this year, and he just walked past, and we like got up and we hugged, even though we weren't that close. But it's just like, wow, in the flesh, finally, after a decade or whatever, however long it's been, But so you would be at a picnic table someplace at the pavilion, talking with somebody, having an engaging discussion about who knows what. And then a StephBot person would walk up and they would just butt in and they would just tell you, and this is what was so annoying. They knew the truth. Like, whatever the topic was, they knew the truth. They knew everything. He had the universally preferable behavior. And it wasn't just that. He had the universally preferable answer to every goddamn question in the whole world. That's what he believed that. He would say that, and then he would coach people like how to do that. But it only worked on idiots, right? Like the stuff that he said, the debate, like it would work on somebody who didn't know anything or was totally not prepared to have a debate about metaphysics or whatever the thing was. And they would just show up in like a huge wet blanket and just let you know that you were wrong and stuff was right. And it was kind of insufferable. And I don't know if he like witnessed that himself, if what he would think. I think he would probably think they're aping they're doing the things he says they should do, so they must be right. And the other people, and then he could maybe make a video about how the other people were abused by their mom or whatever. So yeah. And I guess you can't really, do you blame him for that? Do you not blame him for that? Like, he's trying to influence them. They're willingly getting influenced. Is that wrong? Like, maybe he's just attracting people like that, and it's not really his fault. He didn't make them into douchebags. They just are douchebags, and they're attracted to him because he's a douchebag. Like, that's a fascinating discussion to have. Some of them are high functioning. I wouldn't say they're all idiots or anything like that. Far from it. But there's a certain arrogance and a lack of humility. I always have thought that the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. The more things I learn, the more I realize that there's stuff out there that I've never even thought about. And so there's a degree of like, it's pragmatic to admit that you don't know everything and you should approach it that way. And it's just hubristic in the extreme to assume, man, you figured it all out. And he kind of tried to make himself the guy who figured it all out. And again, maybe cult's too strong a word. It gets thrown around a lot and it doesn't have like a super strong definition. But, if you say you've got all the answers, you've got the answer to everything. That's at best, that's delusional, but yeah. Man, how many comments are there now? Damn. I donated some Bitcoin to Larkin Rose. Yeah, Larkin Rose is fine. He's a little curmudgeon, but he went to prison, so I can understand that. He's made good stuff. I way back, like before he got sent to prison, he had done it's quite boring but kind of fascinating, this long like info documentary about like the tax code and subchapter N, blah blah blah, going through. And the whole point was you didn't have to pay income taxes, which is why they went after him, because he made a documentary saying you don't have to pay income taxes. But it was fascinating. You should not have gone to prison for that. You donated $90,000 to him? Holy cow. So if I tell you that I am hard up for money, which I'm sad I'm not, I have a decent job and I'm doing fine. Don't need it, but like, damn. If I say that I need it, will you give me 90,000 in Bitcoin? Defu was a common sense for some family members, but he was hardcore and really hated his mom, who may have deserved it, but he always brought it up. Yeah, yeah. Look, if your parents are horribly like abusing you or dangerous or whatever, yeah, there's very understandable situations where you should leave your family. And there's also like practical reasons you might just leave even though they don't deserve it, but like you're busy or you got to move for work or whatever. But the problem was the rub was his definition of abuse, because for him, anyone who doesn't believe in UPB is abusing you. You know, anyone who doesn't agree with Stefan Molyneux and donate to Stefan Molyneux is violating the NAP and is, you know, is evil. And so like if you go to your family and you present them the truth that is Stefan Molyneux, you bring them the word of our Lord and Savior, Stefan Molyneux, and they don't embrace it, then you need to leave them. They're abusing you by not embracing Stefan Molyneux. Now that, come on, that's a little too far. And yes, apparently he did hate his mom, but he liked his dad, and maybe she deserved it. I don't know, but then he just seemed to hate all women. Yeah, he did have a Jesus complex. He's messianic. I'm the savior of the world. I've cracked the code to secular ethics after the failure of religion, and I've got all the answers, and I can make everything better. And he was popular enough, right? He had enough status in the circles that he ran with that you could delude yourself. I mean, some people can delude themselves with nothing. I mean, there's people who are complete nobodies who still think they're the king of the world. Stefan is a little bit different than that, in that he did have a following. He had thousands of people, like millions of people who had seen his videos. Many thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who not just had seen them, but had seen a lot of them and enjoyed them and got something out of them. You know, and then even more who would donate. I don't know how many, but it must have been thousands of people who were giving him regular donations. Most of them probably not big, but still. And it would be very easy for anyone for that to go to their head. That would go to my head to some degree. I would hope it wouldn't be as much as it did for him, but it could happen, right? If you're going to events and people, it's funny, like he wasn't famous. Like if he was walking around on the street in Manchester, well, maybe in Manchester because of the Free State, but like nobody would even know who he was. He's not a movie star or anything like that or famous athlete. But at PorcFest or Liberty Forum, or if he went to the International Students for Liberty or whatever, yes, then that's going to happen, and people are going to ask him, "Can you come and give me an interview, be on my podcast, be on my show?" And that's just enormously gratifying. You know, it would be to anyone. I mean, but it was primed to go to his head, and it did in the worst way. He had enough. Enough success and genuine success that it sadly like really went to his head. And I don't know if it ever left his head. I don't know enough about him now. I've never heard of Israel Kirzner. Yeah, Israel Kirzner was a South African Jewish economist. So again, I don't hate all the Jews. I read a lot of Jews, and some of the best stuff is by Jews. You know, there's some really smart, awesome Jews, and I'm glad that a lot of them are happily in America and don't have to join the IDF. But I think he was most famous. He did work on entrepreneurism. It's kind of infamously Rothbard hated him. Rothbard mocked him horribly and thought he was an idiot or whatever. He used this metaphor that an entrepreneur is somebody who saw an unnoticed opportunity, and he used the metaphor of somebody walking down the street and seeing a $10 bill on the road that was nobody and picking it up. And I don't remember the details, but Rothbard thought that was stupid, and like he wrote all these articles about just berating him horribly. Yeah, so I don't know a ton about him, but I've got one or two of his books, and I know Pete Betke really likes his stuff. Pete Betke, I think, was what George Mason and at Cato, and he accumulated all of his all of his papers at some point. I think he would have died in the early 2000s. Kirzner, that is. But anyway, yeah. So like, if you haven't heard of him, he's not super famous. Like even within libertarianism. So when Javier Milei like quoted him, I immediately shot up and was like, "Wow, okay, this guy knows his stuff." Um, du- 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 du. Yeah, from what I've read, it looks like Millell is getting stuffed out. Yeah, he balanced the budget, man. He fired a bunch of people. He cut salaries. He deregulated. He's doing apparently everything that he can do right away, and I don't think that that's wrong in this case. You should start a Discord. Why should I start a Discord? Everyone comment. Is that even the thing that's worth doing? Didn't he say fantasy was for the mentally ill? Probably. I mean, he made all these videos about if you like Lord of the Rings, it's because your mom raped you. And why? Well, because Galadriel is a horrible bitch, which is not even what that character is really like. And I just couldn't understand if you write a fictional character, that doesn't imply that you must have had some analog to that character in real life. I don't understand. I mean, he's written fiction. Would we assume that? I mean, maybe in his case, it's true that like every character in that book is a avatar for something that really happened to him. I don't know. His call shows were something else. I don't think I typically didn't like his call shows. Steph was berated for a donor for giving $1. Okay, I thought it was a couple cents. Yeah, he got in a lot of trouble for that, and then somebody wrote him some bit. So there was a huge backlash. He lost a lot of subscribers. But at some point, somebody donated him a very small amount of money, like 80 cents or something like that. But the person wrote him a letter and said, "I'm in college. I have no money. I'm super poor. I'm negative money. But I do like your stuff and I want to support you. I want to do what I can. And so I'm giving you 85 cents or something like that." And, this was after the controversy. So then he made this big, "Oh, thank you, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, oh, okay. So he's a sycophant on top of everything else. I actually got disgust as a reaction from donating to Michael Malice because it wasn't much. But was it like an ironic, fun disgust, or was he genuinely disgusted? And I ask because I don't know. I've met Michael Malice like once at PorcFest, but I mean, other than chatting briefly around the campfire, I don't really know him. We do have some mutual friends that I know a lot better. Some of his crew in New York City are people that I do know pretty well, again from PorcFest, but I don't know enough about him personally to know what he's like in person, other than briefly encountering him. Yeah, I remember sharing a donor. I'm as close as there is to a lengthy super fan, but this woman came out. But this woman came out for me when I spoke against Stefan. If someone said something about you, you'd be surprised, but I wouldn't want to fight them. What's your opinion about Kennedy Robert Kennedy Jr.? The longer you hear him talk and the more you hear, the less you like him. Obviously, there's some good stuff in there. He's great on Anthony Fauci. I really like his book on Anthony Fauci. But he's a Kennedy and his politics are trash for the most part. Kind of the tell was the whole Israel stuff. He just became, and who knows why, if it's sincere or it's calculus, I don't know, but I don't care. And he's not a libertarian, and he should not be getting the libertarian nomination if he ever. I mean, he would be worse than Bill Weld, honestly. Personally, I'm a big Trump fan, but ultimately everyone not voting and having, so yeah. There's only so much you can do with a vote. If you want to vote for someone, that's fine, but it's better to move and have a community and to get stuff done more locally. I mean, in terms of like having an actual effect, it's just no comparison. I think anarchy would lead to city states or something like maybe. I mean, you could say that in the vast time of human existence prior to states, which was the vast majority that humans have existed, there was anarchy, and so states eventually came out of anarchy. I think that's literally true. It's simplifying things because it seems like states initially, especially, required very specific types of circumstances to exist. People don't like to pay taxes, and there are many scenarios where it practically, if tax collection is not practical, it doesn't happen. Let's put it that way. And for most of human history, hunter gatherers cannot be taxed efficiently, so they don't have states. Pastoralists cannot be taxed efficiently, so they don't have states. Even many forms of agriculture, most forms, some would argue, are impossible to tax practically. Even certain types of plants. So, for instance, potatoes are very difficult to tax because you can't look at a potato field and know what the yield is. You don't know how much is there. This is in direct comparison to, say, rice, wheat, barley, corn. Those are things that you can look at a field and be like, well, you've got 1 hectare of corn, which means the king can take this much, and blah blah blah. Now the problem is that what is practical is not it is based on things including technology. So you could tax hunter gatherers now with technology. Uh, you could tax pastoralists now with technology, and by technology, I even mean stuff as basic as money. If you have my money economy, which did not exist until 700 or 800 BCE, there weren't money economies prior to that. But once you have that, the scope of what you can tax, the scope of what's practical expands. And so what you've seen historically, the states arose in very, very specific, and what we're talking about certain types of crops, certain types, specifically irrigation-based agriculture. So the first states are arising in Mesopotamia, in maybe other parts of the Levant, in the Nile, and that those are not the only places where agriculture was happening. It was very, very specific. Against the Grain is a really good book on this if you're interested by it. And there may be others, and there's some I'm reading now that might also pertain to this. But as technology evolves, states can use that at their disposal. But that is not, and historically, it does seem that on net technology has benefited states more than those who oppose them. However, it's not always that way. You can have technologies that make it more difficult. And so this is the big hope for cryptocurrencies, not specifically Bitcoin per se, but if you have a currency that is based on cryptography, and that cryptography is user-friendly enough that it's manageable as a currency, but strong enough that it can't be taken without your consent, then that is something that would make it very difficult. Another thing, like hypothetical, if we had like a Dune scenario where people had private force fields, you put on the force field, and if that force field was strong enough that it was very difficult, well, if it was impossible to kill you, that would do it. But it wouldn't even need to be that. If it was prohibitively difficult to coerce you at that point, then taxing you would become very difficult. You know, like if you put on your shield and the IRS shows up and you're like, boom, and now the only way for them to get past your defenses is with $1 billion investment. So I'm not saying that's on the horizon, and I'm using that as an illustration more as like a practical, like that's what I'm envisioning or hoping for. But if that makes sense, because you have to explain if states are good in of themselves, if they're valuable, if they're adaptive generally, then why did they not exist for almost all of human history? In fact, almost all of agriculture, right? Agriculture goes back 10,000 years. States do not go back as far as we can tell. Maybe we'll learn more at some point, and we can push back it further. But right now, states are happening, late in the Chalcolithic, early in the Ubaid and the Uruk period, and that's pushing us in like the uh, 5,000 years ago ish, maybe tops, maybe six. But then that means there's 4 or 5,000 years of agriculture. I'm talking settled agriculture, settlement agriculture, not just Sweden agriculture, not, but like settled permanent settlements with agriculture, which we also have learned in the last, I don't know, a couple decades that uh, um, sedentary settlements, permanent settlements predate agriculture probably. But anyway, uh, don't have states until much later. So you would expect if they were really adaptive that they would have just always existed, and they don't appear to have done so. And they also have a tendency to fall apart, again, under the right circumstances. So, yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Have you talked about the conviction of Ian Freeman? I haven't talked about it. I don't know enough about the specifics of the case. Maybe that's to my fault. He was at PorcFest this year, although he was under, like he had a tether, he had curfew, he had to go back to Keene every night. The Free Talk Live stand was actually right across from Pork Showers this year, which, I'll be honest, I was just annoyed by all the noise that they made, but that's understandable. I mean, the crime, I don't know if they committed the crime that they're accused of or not, but I also know that the crime they were accused of is not a crime as far as I'm concerned. So, I don't think that you need a license to do with it. So I think that it's unjust as far as that goes. Now, in terms of the specific law, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but I don't know what his sentence was. I hope it wasn't too severe. Oh, I donated a few hundred to Larkin Rose, but the transaction he made to claimed it had 90. Okay. That makes sense. The mother of my children says she can't believe you are still around. Well, I'm flattered that she even knows I exist, but where did she think I would be? That I would be dead? I'm not that old. Just following the facts. Oh, I remember that. I've donated to Steph. Yeah, Steph, I can recall he gave a really great, I think the Libertarian Party of Ontario invited him to speak way back. I was still in college. So I graduated 2008. So it was 2007 or 8. He gave a presentation about how an absolute free market is the best thing for like environmental protection. And of course, nothing he said there was pioneering. It had been said by others. Same to his DRO stuff. That stuff had been said by others. And one of the things that first red flags for me was that he would falsely attribute that he came up with stuff first when other people had come up with, he maybe changed the name, but it was the same stuff. But he gave a very cogent, thorough case for that. And that's one of the things that is a harder case that most, a libertarian who wants to argue for gun rights or whatever, or against a war, I don't say that's easier. It can get technical, but there's a lot of people who could step up to the plate and do that. But arguing, that there should be a total free market in the hunting of animals, that there should be no public land at all, that there shouldn't be public parks, that pollution should not be regulated in any way, that it should not, and he did a good job, and I've seen him. There are many things that he did that were laudatory and that he articulated well and he presented well, and he did make good presentations. Those videos that he make could really hit people, but at some point the tactics used are they're manipulative. And then you have to ask yourself, is that, ethically, while I'm manipulating them to believe the truth, or I'm manipulating them to do something that's best for them. And that's even something that you could hypothetically believe is true, but then to put yourself in the position where you're doing that, where it becomes very easy then to take on the role of I'm making all the decisions for this person. I'm trying to anyway. I'm trying to, I used to think about it. It's um, what's the difference between persuasion and manipulation? Well, persuasion, you're trying to convince somebody to do something that you think is good for them. Manipulation is you're trying to convince somebody to do something that's good for you, but you make them think it's good for them. That's what you're trying to do. So, uh, and what was good for Steph was that he has a huge ego and he wants everyone to think he's the smartest, greatest libertarian. I mean, he said he's the greatest philosopher in 6,000 years. Well, and if he's going to say 6,000 years, why not 10,000? Because there's no philosophers that we can name that go back even half that far. You can't name a philosopher from more than 3,000 BC. You can barely get past 2,500 from now. You can barely get, I think the earliest philosophers you can name are going to go back to like 700 or 800 BC. That's it. Like, so where he came up with the 6,000 number, don't know. He just makes up, he makes up some of the stuff. Yeah. I'm not on Discord and I do like Lord of the Rings. Start a Discord if you don't value your time and want Sims. Okay, so no. Demisteer, I don't know that, but okay, Bitcoin motorist. I'm not familiar with who that is, but I might be interested in seeing that. Oh, Michael Malice's reaction to a $60 Australian donation was blah, worthless currency. Maybe it was yeah, I think that sounds like a joke. I didn't see it, but that sounds like a joke. But and he does like to try and be funny. So I would say you could temper that your reaction to that with the possibility that it was a lighthearted joke. But I can understand maybe if someone gives you $60 to not joke about it. What do you think about the current LP? I don't even know who they are, so not that about that much. I paid $5 million in 1 year in taxes when I sold a chunk of Bitcoin. Wow. Damn. How can I send you the podcast? Can you not post it in the chat? I mean, you could just do that. Or I don't know, maybe you can't post stuff in the chat. Like I said, like he got kicked off everything, and I don't think he should have been kicked off anything. But I'd already kind of stopped watching his stuff. It just got tedious and boring and repetitive, and he was weird and creepy, and I don't. And I think he was, libertarianism was too small for him. He wanted the biggest audience possible, and it's just not the biggest audience. And I think for me, it was when he made the Trayvon Martin video, which I think was in 2013, which was a good video. That was a good video describing. Can I see this? Nope, I cannot see the link. It's pointing up, but there's no link here. Type out like the name of the podcast and the name of everything, and I will type it in my Google and I'll look for it. Like just every keyword you can think about, and I will search it on my other page. But that video did extremely well. But a lot of people who watched it, a lot of people who picked up on it were not libertarians at all. They were like conservatives and boomers and NRA people. And I think That's when I noticed it. Maybe the process had been going on a bit longer than that. I'm not sure. But he started to get a lot of non-libertarian people, and that's wonderful, wonderful. You can speak your libertarianism to them, but then that's when he was like apologizing to Christians, even though before he was like Christians are evil and Christians are completely wrong, and if you're a Christian, you're a bad person, and if you don't condemn Christians, you're a bad person. Except if he was interviewing a Christian like Tom Woods, then he would pretend like everything was fine, which, like, okay. And yeah, and he got to, and then it was the whole what was the other thing? Oh, the immigration stuff, and like, I mean, you can disagree about the immigration stuff, but he was getting into like all Mexicans they're a K species and not an S species, and they're not like normal humans because they reproduce too much. And it was like, okay, come on. So, have you been following the something Willis scandal? No idea who that is. What do you think about the MAGA conspiracies? What are the MAGA conspiracies? I don't know what they are, so I can't say what I think. What Bitcoin did more than once, but okay, let me look. What Bitcoin did TUR I was in a cult. I mean, I've been brainwashed, so I know what that's like. What Bitcoin did Tur Demister. I was in a cult with Tur Demister. So I have no idea who this person is, but thank you for the heads up. I will listen to this pretty soon. This is from last year. Okay, I found it. Thank you, Bitcoin Motorist. And I hope to see you, Bitcoin Motorist, at PorcFest this year. I assume that you'll be there. Yeah, you weren't in this. I don't know if you were in this. The facilities people have already contacted me, and I don't know what I should say. There's some stuff in the works that I feel like I want to break, but I shouldn't, so I won't. Nothing that would shock you, though. I don't think. Yeah. So let's actually talk about that. So all of you, my subscribers, are basically libertarians. And I want to know how many of you have never gone to PorcFest and why you haven't done it yet, because you should. Even if you don't want to move to New Hampshire and you have your reasons not to move, fair enough. I'm not going to say people are obligated to do so, but it's a great event. And it's always fun to meet subscribers, and you would not just be meeting me. There's a ton going on there. It's super interesting, and it's an amazing location despite the bathrooms electrocuting people. So I don't think I'll be at PorcFest this year. I've never been. The mother of your children has been. Oh, well, that's another thing. PorcFest is very family friendly. There's a lot of children who go there. A lot of families that go there. It really has kind of, I don't want to say change. Yeah, it's definitely changed. Things changed. PorcFest has changed. But apparently, for up until 2008, 9, 10, 11, it was much more a bunch of single bachelor libertarians like having a big drunken drug party. And that is still part of it. But it has grown to there are a ton of families. Now, you can't do anything with the kids because they have guns. Like legit guns. Like 14-year-olds who are drunk and have AR-15s. So it's worth it just to see that. So Expelidac, you've had children with a woman who has been to PorcFest. So it sounds like you have somehow managed to meet a libertarian woman and had children. But like PorcFest is awesome for children. And then your children can meet all the other libertarian children and get jobs when they're 5. carrying trash and delivering, doing dishes for people. Uh, I've never been to PorcFest. I just can't afford it. Cinefan. Now I remember when we first connected on YouTube that you were like 12, but I also remember that that was 10 years ago. So you are what, 22, 23 at this point? PorcFest does not have expensive tickets. You can get there. It's not that hard. So I don't know. Why is what I don't understand what's you're 27. Yeah, okay. So wow. Because I'm pretty sure you were like 13 or 12 or something. I guess you must have been 17 or 18 because I haven't been on YouTube long enough for you to have been that young. But it's not that expensive. I've never been, but I would like to go in the next 2 years. That's an interesting time window. I was 16 when I first started to connect with you. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I think the first video I did was in February 2011. And that would have made me 27, and I'm 40 now. So 13 years. Yeah, so if you guys want to go to PorcFest, why haven't you gone to PorcFest? I mean, people come from Australia, people come from England, people come from Scandinavian countries, all over the United States. I remember somebody took a bus all the way from, I mean, a young person, I don't, looked like a teenager, wanted to go, didn't have a lot of money, took a bus from Minneapolis. It's a matter of getting organized. I'm pretty lazy. Wow. Come on. This is what when you accidentally become wealthy because of Bitcoin, you get all these people who are wealthy, but who are actually just not like not good workers or whatever. Yeah. You're 40. I would have never thought that you look much younger. Well, I get that all the time. It's starting to show a little bit, though. I will admit. Most people think I'm about 10 years younger than I am. And I attribute that to never doing drugs and not doing alcohol, because I really don't know what else it is. I'm in school at the moment. I guess that's fair. Okay, but what are the rest of your excuses? Do you believe in the supernatural? If there's like a specific thing, I'm probably going to say no. In general, the idea that there are things that maybe we can't scientifically understand or explain, I think that's obviously going to be the case. But if you then come to me and say, well, are ghosts real? What does that even mean? Like, do I think that it's a conscious entity of a dead person that is physically? Almost certainly not. Is there some phenomenon that's happening that people are interpreting as ghosts? Very well could be. And is it something that maybe science can't explain? Also very possible. If I go to PorcFest, which likely won't happen, how do I find you? So PorcFest is not it's a large campground, but it's not an impossibly large venue. There's certain areas that are busy and well traveled, and you are likely to bump into people. It is unlikely, like when you're there, you start to notice that you see many people over and over and over and over again. So you would very likely bump into me. Now, in my case, now because I run not an event, but I run the pork showers there. They will be on the map, and you will know, oh, there's pork showers. I'll be able to find Lengthy Arthur there because I'll be running that again for the 4th year in a row. And yeah. What do you think about the controversy surrounding drag queen story hour? Well, of course, I believe in private property and people having exclusive control over their private property. And if you own a a business and you want to hire a drag queen to come and read a book, and other people want to bring it's not a crime. Obviously, public money shouldn't exist, period. And if there is public money, it certainly shouldn't go to that. It shouldn't go to anything, but it should certainly not go to that. In terms of like beyond that, culturally, I think that there probably is an agenda there. There's a certain type of man who is just gung-ho about the culture war, and they want to get the kids, get them in public school, get the public schools teaching them that religion is bad and guns are bad and Republicans are bad, and that they all need to believe in evolution, which I believe in evolution, but I don't think that the government needs to subsidize it. And that, whatever the agenda item is, and apparently the agenda item is nowadays that, there are no men and women, and that gender is a social construct or part of speech, but it's certainly not a sex, and blah, 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 blah. And not only do I think that's wrong, I just don't think that has any place in public discourse. I personally am not into the whole drag thing. I caught chlamydia from a drag queen at one point, so maybe that soured my opinion of them. It was a long time ago, but it happened. That's the whole. I'm gay, but I'm not super immersed in all of gay culture, and that's a part of gay culture to the extent that it is gay culture, and I'd say that it's fair to say that it is. It's just not something that I'm super into. And again, if consenting adults want to do it, that's fine. I could even respect that there's some effort that goes into it. The ones who are really good at it do put in a lot of time, and it's amazing how well some of them pass. Some of the drag queens pass better than some of the trans people. Which is kind of incredible. But they're certainly not entitled to the pedagogy of anyone. And anyone who is genuinely interested in the pedagogy of a child, I would be very, very skeptical of where that would be in that system. Certainly for a younger child. Maybe there's an argument for older children in certain, but I don't think you could ever. There's problems. My philosophy on education is that everyone is different, and there are going to be certain things that are going to be very applicable to the vast majority of people, if not necessarily everyone. And then there's going to be things that are going to be applicable to only smaller subsets. And this is going to shift from person to person and group to group. But I just see that as something that probably doesn't need to be there for anyone. And there might be some exceptional cases where it's maybe not so bad. And certain, if you've got a 15-year-old gay guy who is just really into that, okay, let him go do it. But reading to kids, I don't know. I think it's dumb. Once I graduate. So are we talking college or high school? Also, I am if you're in college or high school right now, how do you even know about my channel? Because really, obviously the channel has been online since 2011. True. But the frequency that I upload videos has been very low for quite a while. Really, 2011, a lot of videos. 2012, a lot of videos. 2013, and then by 2014, the production really started to slide. I still made videos occasionally, but they got fewer and farther between. And by the later teens, rare. And so I don't think, I'd be curious how anyone in your age category, okay, so Cinefan is 27 now. So he's old enough that he was kind of around on YouTube when I was making stuff a lot. I don't make stuff a lot anymore. So I'm kind of genuinely curious how that even happens. I feel like times are going faster. Is it just me? Yeah. It's actually a physiological fact that as you age, your perception of time does change. Now, time is a constant, I guess. As far as I know, I'm not a physicist, but our perceptions of it change. And so I distinctly remember as a young child where a 15-minute recess felt like a very long time. A Christmas break that was 2 weeks long felt like an eternity. Summer break, which was 2 months long, felt like forever. Like it was an endless series of days, day after day after day after day, forever and ever and ever. And I thought that I would be in elementary school for 50 years. Like that's just how it felt. And then by the end of elementary school, it started to feel like it was accelerating. And I had this epiphany that I was going to be done with middle school and done with high school before I could even blink. And that is what happened. And it's been the same ever since. Where is the ubication of Porkfest? Okay. What do you think about the Ukraine war? So that's actually something I do want to make another video about. I made a couple videos on it earlier. I haven't really changed my opinions about it. There have been some changes, but not big ones. There was actually something I considered doing tonight on this. I didn't know how this live stream was going to do. I didn't even know how anyone was going to watch and what people were going to say. It was slow to begin with. Let's say that. There's stuff. There's just definitely stuff worth talking about, but not a lot. Some, but not a lot. My lack of international travel is an anxiety thing, not a laziness thing. Calling myself lazy rather than just saying I can't do it is an attempt to shame myself into overcoming my anxiety. Huh. Well, you should just do it. Just decide to do it. Let's all peer pressure him to do it so he has to get over his anxiety. Who thinks that Unifog should get over his anxiety and go to Porkfest this year? Sorry to put you on the spot, but not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. You're basically asking for help in that. I think you should. Come say hi. College. I've known about your channel since 2016. So 2016 was 7 or 8 years ago. So you would have been like not even in high school or barely in high school. Damn. How did you come across this crazy YouTuber when you were that young? Do you know Estelful? I don't know anyone by that name. You mentioned Mormonism. Have you ever delved into the kooky world of Scientology? Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. I don't know that I've read a book on it yet. I do think I have Going Clear somewhere. I've obviously listened to a lot of ex-Scientologists, and I know about the whole Xenu thing, and that's another interesting. In a way, I honor them because they mass sued the IRS to cancel their tax bill. And I think that was very laudable. So like, I appreciate that. Their story kind of solidified what legally in the United States defines something as a religion. And that thing is, does the IRS consider it a religion or not? And how they decide if it's a religion or not is how afraid they are of your ability to litigate against them. I went to Asia alone. New Hampshire is not a big deal. Yeah. I won't even drive 3 hours away alone. Okay, what is with these people? Listen, you want to travel a long way? Just go into my back catalog and just listen to videos the whole time. I have enough content. There's like 600 hours. You could literally walk here from Australia. On my high school, prohibited to do twerking. You think that's good or bad? Well, you shouldn't have a high school. High school should be abolished. Twerking is quite difficult. I can't do it. I've seen people do it and I've asked them to teach me and it's just, I can't. So, wonderful. It's a wonderful hand-eye coordination. I read Dianetics. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating in the sense that he's a fascinating, like, horrible writer. Unifog, you are ignoring my call out to you to come to PorcFest this year. So don't change the subject. Resolve yourself to get over your fears and come to PorcFest this year. You'll grow as a person, get out of your shell. I'll even make you take a communal shower. That'll just totally get you out of your no, just kidding. Can't make you do that. It's the only circumstance in which I'm against communal showers is that they be mandated universally. All right, guys. So it is getting late. This has been interesting. I definitely will make some content soon. I want to do something specific about PorcFest. I want to do something about pork showers. There's some interesting stuff I want to talk about that. I do want to make a video about the Ukraine war. And I do want to do some Civil War stuff and also maybe a review of Lincoln. So before we go, are there any things that you guys would like to see or are interested in? Or is there any type of content of mine that you found particularly compelling or interesting or not? And you've got a couple minutes. You know, I know that there's like a delay or whatever. So you have the same voice of Morse Law as that. I don't know who that is. Review of Lincoln, that would be great. Book review, some of your best stuff. And I've read so many books. I did read. I finally read Brian Kaplan's Against Education, which is a great book. And I was like, oh, I'll do a review of that. And then it just didn't. So I liked your video about Palestine. Thank you. And I'm not even like, I don't love the PLO or Hamas. Palestinian society, to the extent that I know about it, is not something that I particularly like or feel drawn to. And I know that there's a lot of stupid leftists who chant things and are idiots. But look, just ask, what does Jewish democracy mean to a Zionist? What does that mean? And that means it can only mean the complete violation of every Reformation, or not every Enlightenment ideal needs to be sacrificed to make a non-democratic, apartheid, Jewish-dominated state. That's all that I mean, it can mean nothing else than that. But they have this lip service that they want to play to democracy and egalitarianism. So they say Jewish democracy, but it can't. I would like to know what or if you have changed your mind over the years, especially politically, ethically. If you go far enough back, absolutely. Recently, I mean, obviously, like as you get older, you kind of change what you care about or focus on, for sure. Like, I mean, I never would have thought that I would be making videos about communal showers, even though I know that the vast majority of you guys are probably not super interested in that. But I just felt like that's the topic that I'm interested in and no one else is interested in. So I'm going to be that guy. Another one would be the whole foreskin stuff, circumcision stuff. When I started this channel, would never have thought that I would have gotten so into that. I think my very first video on that goes back to like 2013. I believe it's titled Confessions of a Reluctant Intactivist. And I had much shorter hair then. But before that, like politically, so I definitely changed on abortion. But it was really just before this channel started. But I used to be pro-choice, and then I became pro-life probably around the year 2010-ish. Just because it's technically a homicide, and if you want to commit a homicide, there's certain circumstances where you can commit a homicide. I believe in that, but terminating a fetus, ending a pregnancy, whatever you want to call it, is not one of those justified reasons. And so there's that. IP would be another one. I definitely was influenced by Stephan Kinsella when it comes to that. Who, by the way, one of the more famous libertarians who I know has seen my channel, but he says he only watches the satire videos, which there were only ever like 3. So people tend to really like those. But I don't do many of them. I have had a couple times where I thought this would be a funny video, but then I just don't do it. The reason that they prohibit twerking is because a teacher fell in love with one after seeing me do twerking. The teacher fell in love with twerking in the abstract, or with you or / another student specifically? Yeah, communal showers definitely is like a bellwether for a host of cultural social issues: how nudity is viewed, how sex is viewed, the rights and obligations of children, the authority or lack of authority of not just adults in general, but of schools in particular, um, about the hierarchy of importance. So, there's if you have, say, a hierarchy that says that hygiene is more important than feelings, then you would have mandatory communal showers, because they are more hygienic. And actually, specifically to do them naked is more hygienic, because if you shower in a suit, it's acting like a net on your filth. However, if you conversely say that, well, someone's feelings are more important than that, and I'm not saying necessarily one is right and one is wrong, then you would say, well, no, if someone wants to take one, that's fine. But if their feelings are going to be hurt or they're going to be uncomfortable, then they shouldn't. Right. So when you can see a shift from universal mandates, which were very common up until about the mid 90s, maybe a little bit before, um, to them not being mandated or even allowed, that shows that there's been a shift. Either something became less important, another thing became more important, some combination thereof. And there's also very clear, and this has been this is not something that I observed myself, but it's called the sexual gaze, where nudity has become de facto sexual. It was not always seen that way. It logically doesn't make a ton of sense. It makes some sense, but not a ton of sense. And so then you have this weird thing where, like, all these 19th century paintings that the Victorians and all their stuffiness and Puritanism could view as non-sexual, but now we would look at as being obviously sexual. And actually, to bring it back to PorcFest, fascinatingly, pork showers has never really faced a lot of backlash. Nobody has complained. Nobody has said we shouldn't do it or we couldn't do it. We require people to go naked, but it's in a enclosed space. Now, anyone in that space will be there, but anyone outside will not have to see it or will be able to see it. And we had people who didn't want to do it, so they didn't do it. But, like, nobody was complaining to the organizers or anything like that. There were, however, nudists at PorcFest, the Body Freedom Village people, and a pork shower started as part of Body Freedom Village. And those people get hounded and hounded and hounded and hounded, and so much, it is debated so much and argued about so much, that on the various PorcFest chat rooms, whether they be in Signal or Telegram or on Facebook, had to ban discussion or set up side discussions about the nudity, because there were not a majority, I don't think by any means, but there's a large enough group of people who are so anti that and inimical to it, that it would just kept coming up. But what was interesting, if you read the people who were anti nudism, the way that they would argue about it, the way that they would characterize what was happening, was they would make any nudism at all overtly sexual and suggestive. And they're putting, so for instance, the main nudist is a guy named Jeff, and it's not a secret, he's a very famous nudist, and just portraying him as the most vicious, in your face, sexual predator, and then they would describe a situation where there was clearly nothing happening, there was no risk to anyone, nothing was done, but they were there. The way that they would describe, they would describe Jeff would go and just be talking with somebody, and then that was described as thrusting his penis in someone's face, which is not accurate. So like you can see in the head of that person anyway, that just nudity is inherently sexual. Now, why that was totally anathema, but then the communal showers are not anathema, that's a very fascinating question. I don't really have an answer to that, but I would love to. I'm a seed investor in a Bitcoin company that has a cure for all viruses. If you get through trials, I wouldn't want it mandated. Okay, I'd go to PorcFest. I'll pop into the travel agent on Monday. Hey, Unifrog, good job. I would love to say hi. Come say hi. Find me at the pork showers. Everyone congratulate him. That's awesome. What part of, well, you don't have to say this, but I'm curious what part of Australia you're from, but you don't have to answer. It's not really a question, but he's a Kennedy. Hey, don't smear all the Kennedys. I also think Roe should have been overturned because it was based on, yeah. So the Roe decision was apparently horribly bad law. And I mean, it was when I was first getting into libertarianism, I would hear these references. People would be like, writers would be not even talking about abortion, but they would be kind of giving examples of horrible Supreme Court decisions in ways that they violated the Constitution, which are, you could obviously write many books about ways that they violated the Constitution, but they, they're referring, they're to reach that decision. They're talking about penumbras and like these phantom things that aren't there. You're just projecting things you want to see into the Constitution. Yeah. Maybe the reason why they ban communal showers is the same that they ban twerking. Yeah, could be that. Maybe that's it. Have you learned how to be an anti-racist yet? Yeah, I almost made a video about Kendi again. He got in some trouble, and he's an idiot. He can't run his charity. He doesn't do anything. Talk about a guy who's a total midwit, just being granted all the accolades and money. I mean, he was getting $10 million donations from Jack Dorsey, among others. Take it as the opportunity costs of those in our society who are racked with white guilt and wish to virtue signal their contrition by subsidizing totally inept, unworthy, idiot Black people. They don't support like smart, hardworking, good Black people who could really use it. No, they'll give it to him. So no. Awesome. Well, I don't know if we have any way to stay in contact, but if you want to give me a heads up, just leave a comment on a video and I'll see it. But it will be no secret that I'll be at PorcFest. I'll be running the pork showers. I'll be easy to find. I believe that I'm getting trolled by a twerker. There are worse things in life, though. All right. Well, my dear subscribers, the night is late. I grow weary. So thank you, everyone who commented, who said hi. It's good to talk to you all again. And we'll be doing some more content soon. I'm not relaunching the channel or anything grandiose like that. But I just had to make sure that it still worked. And it looks like it does. So thank you all and have a good night.